Hello, this is Truman, and we continue our lessons in personal evangelism. Now, this story has several lessons. One, be persistent in your witness for Jesus. Two, don't give up on people. Don't judge by the outward appearance. In fact, sometimes God impresses you about someone with His burden, even before they have the burden of God on their heart. And three, follow up. Cultivation is part of the work of evangelism. We moved into a neighborhood in Gresham, Oregon, and we'd bought our first house. And we were so happy there, but I determined that I was going to try to at least share my testimony to everybody in that development. And so systematically, I had index cards and I was going from house to house, introducing myself over a period of weeks and months to get to know everybody in our development. And I remember on this one cul-de-sac, I met Diane. And as I began to stand at the door and try to share with Diane, she let me know right away that her and her husband were agnostic. He was an engineer. She had a geology degree. She didn't believe in creation. They believed in evolution. And so it seemed that the door was shut. However, that's what it seemed. But in my heart, I had a burden for them. Now this is important, that no matter what people say, God can give you a burden and He can see them from His perspective. And so it's like God was sharing His burden for Dave and Diane to me. And even though they were saying, I'm not interested, God began to say, I want you to be persistent. And so I began to pray for them over the next coming weeks. And I began to go by with cultivation material. And so I began to go by and say, there are scientists that do not believe in evolution, that believe in creation. And that seemed to be their stumbling block. And one of the things in personal evangelism is sometimes we have to pull down the stumbling block in people's minds. Those barriers that won't even let them listen or consider the good news of Jesus Christ and salvation. And so book after book I brought them, and do you know that they began to read those books? It was over a period of a year that they began to investigate, and I remember that they began to open up and began to say things like, I've never heard another scientist present the other side, the creation side. And so God was using the story of creation to pull down the stumbling blocks. And finally the day came that they were very conscious that the issue now was that Jesus died on a cross for their sins. Both Dave and Diane would give their heart to Jesus. Do you know that Dave and Diane would become pillars in our church? And he would become our director of home groups, small groups, for many, many years. Now, probably 40 years have passed, and they are still faithful to the Lord. Their sons have come to know Christ. But here's a lesson. You just don't judge by the outward appearance. When God gives you a burden for someone, even before they have a burden for their own soul, God is giving you a burden to share. Don't give up on people just because they say they're not interested, just because they seem like they're not open, because there'll come a day that God can open their mind and heart. And also be persistent. Pray and ask God, what is the stumbling block? What is the issue that keeps them from being open to the gospel? May God bless you in your journey in personal evangelism.